Hi, teammates. I'm quickly going to model how to write a context statement for your body paragraph in your RST essay. So on Friday, we worked on choosing relevant evidence that supports your assertion. So let's just review what I have so far. I have my assertion. The Algonquin natives used natural resources to build different types of shelter. Remember, you're writing about the Iroquois, and your assertion should focus on food, shelter, or tools, or two of those things combined: food, shelter, tools. So in this assertion is about shelter, and I have a quote here. For most of the year, they lived in settled villages of brick bark houses, and it talks about their wigwams and that only one family would live in a wigwam. Great. If I scroll down, I have another quote about wigwams and then my interpretation. We'll talk about that tomorrow. And then I have a quote about longhouses, because the Algonquin also lived in longhouses. So I want to show you how to write a context. Students often have trouble with this. You need at least one context for each body paragraph and one context in your introduction paragraph. I'm not going to worry about that right now, though. So a context, you need to ask yourself, it's historical background. So what does your reader need to know about the world or what's going on during the time I'm writing about? It could be similar to a gist. You're focusing on the who and the what. You could also focus on the where and when this event or time period is occurring. So historical background information, and it must be facts. It's not any inferences or your ideas that will come in your interpretation. Context is just background information and facts, okay? So my first step is I want to write a sentence that introduces my reader to the topic. That's my first step. So I know this is about shelter, right? I want to write something, a gist statement. Also, context statements can also set up a quote. So it can either be background information or it can set up a quote or both. So my quote is about wigwams. It's one type of shelter. So I'm going to go very simple with my context and just set up the quote that some Algonquin people build wigwams to live in. And that's going to be my context statement. Okay, and so your context statement should, if you get really advanced in your writing, you'll have a context statement before each quote. For now, as long as you have one context statement in each body paragraph, you're fine. So it says some Algonquin people built wigwams to live in. So this gives me some background information about a wigwam, and it also sets up my quote, okay? Because now I'll have a quotation about wigwams. Great. If I scroll down here, I need to add a context in front of this quote. This quote is about how some Algonquin lived in longhouses. So I'm just going to write, some Algonquins also lived in longhouses. Paste that right there. And this would be a body paragraph. I have my assertion, context, a quote, and then interpretation, which we'll talk about later in blue. Another context, quote, interpretation. So context is just background information, who, what, where, when, that your reader needs to know. Or it can also set up the quote. It could be both. Background information, or it sets up the quote. It's only facts, only factual information. Make sure that you're not writing inferences. Inferences and your ideas, what you think, will come later in the interpretation. Okay, so your context basically is a background information gist statement, and it sets up the quote. You're going to highlight it in yellow as well. If you're having trouble, a lot of students are like, where do I begin? What do I write for my context? I'm also going to go back to I'm going to give you a reading that we did before we started the RST about the Iroquois and the Eastern Woodlands region, and I'll give you some background information. Just make sure you write it in your own words, and your context is always just facts. Oops, I meant to pause that. Oh, there it is.